Let's talk about Andrew Carnegie. If you've ever heard the phrase the American dream, well, this guy's story is the textbook definition. A poor immigrant kid who becomes the richest man in the entire world. But his story, it's not that simple. It's both incredibly inspiring and, frankly, pretty shocking. It's like a tale of two completely different men living in one body. And this, right here, just lays it all out, doesn't it? The two sides of the coin. On one side, you've got the saint, the man who funded over 2,500 free public libraries for everyone, the guy who gave away almost all of his money. And on the other side, you've got the sinner, the ruthless tycoon who crushed unions and whose workers toiled in some of the most barbaric conditions imaginable. So that's the big question, isn't it? How does that even work? How can one person be this incredible force for good and at the same time a completely merciless industrialist? To figure that out, we have to go back, way back to the very beginning. Okay, so our story starts in Scotland, way back in 1835. Now you gotta understand, Carnegie wasn't born into wealth or power. He was born right into the middle of the chaos of the Industrial Revolution, and his family was on the losing end of it. And those early years taught him some hard lessons about how the world really works. Imagine being a young boy and watching your father, a skilled, proud craftsman, become economically worthless almost overnight. His dad was a handloom weaver, and a new steam-powered machine just made his entire life's work obsolete. Carnegie never forgot the image of his father having to beg for any kind of work. That's something that just gets burned into your memory. And the lesson he pulled from that was absolutely brutal. He realized that value isn't about being good or working hard. It's structural. Your effort means nothing if the system decides you're not valuable anymore. Real power, he figured, comes from understanding that system and seeing where it's headed next. So while his father was kind of stuck, mourning what he'd lost, his mother, Margaret, was a totally different story. She was tough, she was pragmatic, and she was laser-focused on one thing: survival. When the family packed up and moved to America, you can bet she was the one driving the whole. And from his mom, he learned lesson number 2. Waiting around for the world to be fair, that's a fool's game. She showed him that real security doesn't come from fairness. It comes from control. Control of your money, your circumstances, your future. So after years of back-breaking jobs in cotton mills as a telegraph messenger, his mentor at the Pennsylvania Railroad, a guy named Tom Scott, showed him another way: investing. And for the first time ever, Carnegie made money without physically laboring for it. And that completely rewired his brain. It was an epiphany. A job gets you an income. But ownership, owning a piece of the system, that gives you leverage. That's real power. So armed with these lessons, Carnegie didn't just want to get into the steel industry. Oh no. He wanted to own it, to completely dominate it. And sure, he used new technology like the Bessemer process, but that wasn't his secret sauce. His real genius was in the system he built. That system has a name: vertical integration. It sounds a little corporate and jargony, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Instead of relying on other companies for raw materials or for transportation, Carnegie just thought, wait a minute, why don't I just own all of it? And this is exactly how he did it. It's ruthless, but it's brilliant. He bought the mines where the iron ore came from. He controlled the coal fields to fuel the furnaces. He owned the ships and the railroads to move it all around. You see what's happening? By controlling every single cost from the ground up, he could make steel cheaper than anyone else. No one could compete. He had built an unbeatable fortress. But, and this is a massive but, that incredible efficiency, that relentless focus on cost-cutting, came at an astronomical human price. Carnegie's motto was literally, watch the costs and the profits take care of themselves. Well, the biggest and easiest cost to cut was always his own workers. I mean, just try to imagine this. For the men working in a Carnegie steel mill, life was a living hell. 12-hour shifts in blistering, dangerous heat, 7 days a week. And you got exactly 1 day off a year, the 4th of July. To Carnegie, workers dying on the job wasn't a tragedy. It was a line item on a spreadsheet, just another cost of doing business. So all of this tension was just simmering, and you knew eventually it was going to boil over. And it did, in 1892 at the Homestead Mill. The workers, who were unionized, were demanding better wages and safer conditions. And where was Carnegie? Oh, he was conveniently on a very long vacation in a castle in Scotland. He put his notoriously ruthless partner Henry Clay Frick in charge and gave him one simple command: break the union no matter what it takes. Now, later in life, Carnegie would try to play innocent, saying things like, "Oh, I had no idea it would get so violent. If I had been there, I would have stopped it." But his own words tell a very different story. This is from a private letter he sent to Frick during the strike. "We all approve of anything you do. We are with you to the end." That's not an out-of-the-loop boss. That's a guy giving his henchmen a blank check for brutality. And Frick cashed that check. He hired 300 armed Pinkerton mercenaries to take back the mill. What followed was basically a small war, a 12-hour gun battle. When it was over, 9 workers and 7 Pinkertons were dead. The Union wasn't just beaten, it was obliterated, wiped out for almost half a century. And Carnegie's reputation as a friend of the working man was permanently stained. He was now seen as a hypocrite. After Homestead, something seemed to shift in Carnegie. He had total control. He had his empire, and now he seemed to want some distance from it all. He started planning his third act. He wouldn't be an industrialist anymore. He was going to become the world's greatest philanthropist. In 1901, he made his grand exit. He sold his entire steel empire to the financier J.P. Morgan for a mind-boggling $480 million. Now, to put that in perspective, in today's money, that's like selling a company for over $17 billion. That single deal made Andrew Carnegie the richest man on earth. But what he did next was even more shocking. He didn't just sit on that mountain of cash. By the time he died in 1919, he had systematically given away over $350 million of it. Think about that. He spent the last 2 decades of his life with one single, full-time job, giving his fortune away. And this chart just says it all, 90%. He gave away 90% of his entire fortune. And this wasn't just a whim. He was guided by an essay he wrote called The Gospel of Wealth. His core idea was pretty radical. The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced. So he built libraries, funded universities, and created institutions, all designed to give other people the tools to climb the ladder, just like he did. So how do you balance the books on a life like that? The sinner versus the saint? I think the key is to understand that for Andrew Carnegie, it was never really just about the money. It was about power. And his real, undeniable genius was in understanding the very architecture of power itself. He just understood the game on a different level. He knew the importance of timing, jumping into steel when everyone else was still stuck on iron. He mastered infrastructure, knowing that if you control the system, you control the outcome. He used ownership to create leverage. He used crises to crush his competitors. And he had the genius to know the exact right moment to sell it all. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a systems architect. Which brings us right back to this final, really uncomfortable question. Can all the good he did with his money, all the libraries and opportunities he created, can it wash away the blood and the suffering that built that fortune? Can a legacy of ruthlessness be redeemed by one of unprecedented generosity? That is the puzzle Andrew Carnegie left for all of us to solve.